people weren't picking that up. So when I was in college, I was getting a lot more involved in like student government. Like I learned how to game the student government system. I like started a club with my friends.
What club did you start?
It was called the Round Table Club.
Round table.
Yeah,
Whoa, all right.
it was supposed to be named after like the Knights of the Round.
Yeah,
Everybody thought it was like the pizza.
no, I got it was after
Yeah,
the Knights of the Round.
yeah.
What was your role? Were you Merlin?
I didn't really want to like. The idea was like we would just create this group and like we would just have
So you
friends.
guys didn't actually assign, hey, you're
Right.
Arthur.
There wasn't at first, and the people I started with want to do anything with it. They're like, let's just wait until people come to us. But then meanwhile, student government was like, hey, what are you guys doing? You have a chartered club. There's like three of you guys. What's going on? What I ended up doing was I was like, crap, I need to like save this thing before they decharter us. So on the fourth floor at Laney, it used to be like the anime club, video game, kids, like they would all hang upstairs, play Yu-Gi-Oh!
Hmm.
And some of those were my friends from high school.
Hmm.
So I was like, hey guys, you should join the Roundtable Club. Like, what's that? I was like, it's just a club. And I was like, we could probably use it to go to Fanime every year, like this anime convention in San Jose.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, okay. And so I basically ended up building one of the largest, it was actually the largest club on campus. It was 70 members.
Your round table.
Yeah. And I had
Good
this
job.
really elaborate card system where like we had like the hearts, the like clovers, diamonds, spades, and each department had different members. And one group did community service, another group like did selling. They'd sell candy and sodas. We had like a little hustling thing in the cafeteria.
You were learning how to be a CEO.
Yeah, and you know, it was probably my first time getting experience of like not letting certain people in.
Yeah.
So I'd have like there'd just be usually people like really weird social quirks, like
I think that's a life lesson that a lot of people
yeah.
learn later in life, and they have a hard time in their youth, is how to say no.
Yeah, we had a whole app like underneath my desk. I had a stack of applications where I was just like, yeah, we'll get back to you. But like, usually that guy was like, oh, this guy kind of harasses women. I don't want to have this person in our club. And what
Good
was
for you.
yeah, and you know, full transparency, we ended up gaming the government system. So I got a lot of exposure into kind of how government works. So like there was super loose like regulation. I ran the club affairs officer. My girlfriend at the time was club affairs officer. I became the inter club council president, which was like the own club's organization. And because people didn't show up to club meetings, I just had my friends joining other people's clubs and then being the reps at the inter club council. So it would just be me and my friends with like a budget. I'd be the president of it. And all the different I would say 80% of the room were just my friends that I went to high school with.
So did this round table and you being the president
Yeah.
inspire you to become a founder?
Uh yeah, eventually. I mean, we ended up using all the money to go to Fanime every year. And
Mhm.
my objective was I knew most of my friends didn't grow up with a lot of means. Like when I lived in England, my dad's family had money. So like we had a house that was like empty. And I didn't understand that until I got older. Like, so I was like, holy crap. So when I was in Oakland, I was like, hey guys, we're gonna go to Fanime, we're gonna get everything paid for, stay at the Fairmont Hotel here in San Jose. I don't know if it's still Fairmont, but
Mhm.
and we'd stay on the top floor. I figured out how to like exploit President's Club system. So I just book a bunch of rooms under my name, sign up for the President's Club, and then get the school to pay for it. And I would get like stacked like benefits to where I was in the premium top of part of the President's Club. So I was getting free suites.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, we had like at one point
Bro, you had a suite during Fanime?
yeah, I booked out the whole top. It was like a bunch of the suites on the top floor.
That must have been a good time.
And it was we were just getting the school to pay for it.
I know.
And like plus our business thing. And eventually the school started catching on. Like the government was like, why are we funding these guys like, anime trip every year?
How many trips did
I really did at least two.
Oh man.
And so what happened was I was, you know, getting exposure. I was getting ready to transfer. You know, I was like, crap, we gotta actually like do something. So what ended up happening was I met with some local it was like called KenyobiCon.
Mhm.
And it was like a local black anime convention. They've been going on for like over a decade. Hanging out with these guys, like learning what they were doing. And they were like, you know, putting on an anime convention is super hard. Man, this sounds Sounds kind of fun. Let's try it out.
All right. You're like, game
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. So I basically became friends with the dean of the college, looked into different funds that like the school had, like events council, became members on the events council. At this point, I was like the club affairs officer. My girlfriend at the time transferred.
At the time, you didn't know that you were learning skills on how to raise.
Yeah, I didn't know anything.
I
I
know,
was
but
just freestyling.
you were freestyling.
Yeah.
This is similar to your path right now because as a founder,
Yeah.
you learn how to raise. Like you
Right.
were going up to the school, you're like, hey, I need this, I need this. You were able to have a pitch deck.
We had like 70 people like in the organization
Exactly.
that were just making money for me. And I had no
A lot of
idea.
parallels.
Yeah, I was pitching to DeVry University when they were alive, and
Yeah.
like I was just in their boardroom, and I was just like, "Yeah, if you guys like sponsor our event, you get a tax write off or 501(c)(3). I didn't know any of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not taxes at all. So, they got DeVry to sponsor it, and then I put on a video game convention. Reached out to the East Bay Express. We got featured on the front cover of the newspaper and on their website. And
Let's go,
created
Sean.
good game con, and we got Crunchyroll to sponsor it, and like they showed up and like gave us a bunch of free swag. We held like Street Fighter tournaments. We gave out a couple $1,000s of cash prizes, like
Nice.
literally cash. Some
Are you
pro
still
players.
involved in the anime gaming community?
Not as much as I used to. I am volunteering this year at a anime, so I will be at the anime convention this year.
Okay, cool.
But I used to. It took time to kind of like put myself out there and keep trying stuff.
Have you been to the Guild House in San Jose?
No, I have not.
It's a pretty interesting gaming community.
No.
There's an old pool hall. Bro, you gotta go check it. A lot of video games.
My friends go to that like every week. He goes. I think it's the Guild House. I'm
Yeah,
assuming it's the Guild House.
Yeah.
Comes out here to play.
definitely check it out. Since you have a lot of knowledge of that world, a lot of
Yeah.
people that do cosplay, fanime, video game world. Let's go back to the current space you're in. Since you learned how to raise and fund through being these chapter presidents and
Eventually I transferred to SF State. I was there, and I think one of the things that really started to hit me was that the environments that I was in were non-competitive. Like,
Mhm.
so everybody either followed what I said, and just they were trying to capitalize on whatever I was doing. So I had a lot of following. And then when I was trying to build things with like other people, like at SF State, people just had no motivation. Like, oh, we're gonna lose to Stanford if we compete in this engineering competition. And I was like, guys, let's compete because just to get our names out on paper, it's work.
Yeah.
And these people just they couldn't do it. So eventually, I ended
Why couldn't they do it? Just lack of confidence?
lack of confidence, lack of motivation.
Oh, Stanford.
Yeah, people got really into like the name thing, and I didn't really care. I always feel like I see past stuff,
Mhm.
these labels and stuff. I don't really care like about any like this doesn't mean anything to me. So I ended up. Plus, I went to these programs where there was a lot of these kids went off to Stanford. So
Yeah.
to me, I'm like, hey man, I could easily be these guys. Like it's not. I'm like of the same whatever. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So eventually, I worked for a guy who's selling on Amazon, and he's making like $140,000 a month. He was like a 500 global mentor.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about any of that.
What's 500 Global?
It's a venture capital firm, and they invest in early stage startup companies.
Okay.
So he was a mentor at the program, and I asked him while I was working for him, like, how are you making money, Matt? And he goes, I don't know. I'm using these tools. I don't know how they work. I'm not technical. And he's making $140,000 a month, and I'm helping him ship to Amazon from his condo in downtown SF while going to school. And I was just like, Sean, whatever this guy is doing, and it was like an instinct. And I think that was the thing. I was starting to trust my instinct. It was like, you should drop out of school. I was like in my last year, like I had already taken all these like math classes, started taking engineering classes, and I was like, all right, Sean, whatever this guy's doing, you should drop out and stay with it. Whatever you do. And I told myself this like at a super young age.
Do you have any regrets dropping out?
No, not at all. Well, I regret not going to like a.
Well, obviously you dropped out to chase the bag.
I did, and I actually no.
I don't blame you.
Yeah, and that was the thing.
You're like, finish this semester or learn from this guy that's making 140K a month.
Part time, not even like he wasn't doing anything, no advertising, and so I dropped out. I saw what he was doing, and he was basically gaming these reseller tools, and you could predict sales on Amazon. So I started doing it. I had no experience, business knowledge at all. It was all engineering math.
Did you start making the bag?
No, I actually got sued the first time. Like I bought from this.
Jeez, you dropped out just to get sued?
Yeah, and I mean, I got out the lawsuit, but like, it sucked. Like, I ended up buying from this website. It had a quality assurance. It was called DHgate,
Okay.
and it was like an AliExpress. But I have this is my first time buying anything, and it
Yeah.
was like, oh, I can buy these zigzag wraps, like the rolling Swisher paper, and I can like resell it on eBay and Amazon. And I was doing that. I was getting tons of money. Like we made like 15 grand, like in profit, like that.
Mhm.
And I was like, holy crap.
So why did they see you?
So what ended up happening was, while I was getting returns from some of the customers, and they were like, "Hey, these say zig on."
Oh.
And I was like messaging the guy, and I was like, "Hey, are you sure these are legit?" And the guy was like, "No, these are 100% legit." And I was like, "Man, I feel like this is just some Chinese guy that's like," because the English was all weird, and I was like, "I don't know, Sean, this isn't right." So
Oh,
I
you were getting the bootlegged zigzag.
Yeah, and then people were like, "The Swisher wrap paper is not working." I don't smoke. At the time I didn't smoke anything, so I was like, "I don't know." So I went and pulled everything off of Amazon and eBay, shut it down, and then I take a photo of it, screenshot it, and I email the Zigzag company a year before anything happens, and I'm like, "Hey, these guys are selling fakes. Like they sold me stuff. I'm trying to get my money back, right?" And then what happened was, a year later, my Amazon account gets banned for like fake products, and like my eBay account gets banned, and I was like, I
Are
just
you self-snitched?
well, they people because people kept complaining about fake.
Oh, yeah.
So like my account got banned, and I was like, shit. So I was like, all right, Sean, you got to go back at this again. So we blew all this cash. Yeah, I told my buddy who was working at CVS at the time, uh, hey man, like we got to go back at this again. And he was like, all right, man, let's do it. So he gives me a couple grand, and we go back at it again. And we're selling again on Amazon and eBay. This time we're buying legitimate brands from like distribution companies or directly from the brand. And we're making tons of money. We make like up to, it took over a couple of years. We made it all the way to $1 million in sales. Didn't spend a single dollar in advertising. Right. And I was like, Sean, you're onto something. Like there's something here, and it's not reselling. It's like something more. And so I ended up basically, while that was happening, Zigzag comes back, and they're like, "Hey, we saw that one of our like private investigators bought your fake zigzags, and now you're getting sued." And we got pulled into this massive like lawsuit. Like they put everybody's paperwork into like one giant like pile. So I get these fat like you know documents from everybody who got caught in this giant ring, and I was just like, no, I pulled it off. And then they were like, well, you still sold it. And I was like 21, 22 at the time, no experience. So I took advantage of the free consultation that lawyers give.
Mhm.
I wrote questions, and they're like, yeah, this is how you can navigate this. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'll be back, guys. Now just call another lawyer with more questions. I
So
litigated myself. I litigated myself through the case. And then
Smart.
at the end, they were like, well, here's proof that you sold it. I was like, actually, I'm the one who told you guys a year ago. That's why I got pulled off the website. And they're like, how do you know? Like, where's the proof? And I was like, I actually screenshotted this email, and I had it on my desktop, like on like literally there. It was like one of the only things there. And I forwarded it, and they're like, oh, he actually did. So like I preemptively protected myself.
Mhm.
I still had to like, cash out like 15K, and like I had to borrow money. It was a mess, to do it. But I went back to running my e-commerce business after getting out of all that trouble. And most people would have quit after all that traumatic, stuff. People would have pulled out, but I would cared more about what I was working on, like
Mhm.
versus all the money that was being made off of it. So ran my own e-commerce business. We hired this girl from China. Like she was studying here, met her at a party. I was like, hey, you want to work at my company? She's like, okay. So it was me, her, and my friend running our business in downtown Oakland. We had an office, shipping stuff. And eventually, what ended up happening was, we started getting directly like building direct relationships with the brand. And I was figuring out that the brands didn't understand how Amazon works. So I was trying to get these exclusivity deals like, hey, if you kick off all these sellers that are competing with me, I'll manage your Amazon listing. And, I had no business experience. They fly out to New York and meet one of like the largest paper companies, like that's been around for like 30, 40 years, and hang out with the VP of sales there. He was like, hey, we don't know how Amazon works. And I was like, let me be your only seller. And they're like, and I'm like working it out. CEO's kind of like thinking about it. But we had no leverage. We were just a bunch of black kids in East Oakland, like selling on Amazon. And eventually what ended up happening was I started building momentum from people that I went to school with that were now connecting me to UC Berkeley Haas like graduates, like all their business school graduate kids were like, hey, one of them was like, you should come over and teach me how to do this. So I would just give out all my information for free. I told them where to buy stuff, what price, where even our just the distribution companies or brands that I was buying from for years were like, hey, stop giving away the pricing that we're giving you. And I was like, whatever. And I just kept doing it because I love sharing like information. Like I don't like gatekeeping
Okay.
stuff. So I ended up doing that. And eventually I started hanging out with a different crowd of people. It wasn't just my friends in East Oakland now. Now it was like these UC Berkeley business kids that were all graduates working at big companies, like big tech companies now.
And they were like, how can we get the bag?
Yeah, and people were treating me out to dinner and like drinks and stuff. And I was just like, man, it was so hard for me to wrap my mind around it because I was in instinctive mode. I was just quickly learning and I didn't think that I was smart. I didn't think anything. I was just doing. And eventually, people were like, hey, like, I'll pay you money to do this, like to like teach me how to sell. And I was like,
So you went into the world of consulting.
I didn't charge. I came out for free. I was a terrible business person. Like when it comes,
They're like, hey, we're gonna pay you. No, no,
yeah, no. I mean, and I think
for a person that dropped out of college to get the bag, you're getting offered the bag, and you said no.
well, that was the thing. I always cared about the why. So even though I was losing money on stuff, I was like, Sean, stay consistent here.
Yeah.
There's a reason you're losing money. You're not supposed to lose money selling something that you just bought like immediately. So I ended up doing that. Eventually got into a business relationship with.
Well, good thing you didn't get into the stock market because you would have bought high and sold low.
Yeah, I would have been pretty bad. Well, I probably not. I would have tried to understand the market. I would have cared more about how can I hack this.
Okay.
I was really hacking at Amazon at this point in the eBay search engine. Like I was inflating my views to make it look like a million people looked at my page. Like, how are you doing that? I was like, oh, they don't like the way that they count pages, like views. You can just go into incognito and do a page refresher. And every time that there's like since they're not tracking cookies, like every time there's a new click on the page, it gives you 2 views. So I would just have an auto script running where it just would be opening up an incognito, like with like a bunch of different tabs, and it would just refresh this eBay page. And it would,
but they couldn't detect that it was coming from the same
no. That's
same
why
address,
no,
the same IP address.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So I was like, wow, you have 1 million views on your eBay listing. I was like, oh yeah, man. Maybe like 5,000 in the last hour. Like it was just crazy stuff like that. But I always think what would happen if I were to actually use these skills for like actually making money, which is like where I'm kind of at now. So basically, I figured this out. I decided to launch like a vitamin brand. So I was like, if I can resell other people's products, I could probably use some of these tools to size up the market and figure out where there's an opportunity. So I partnered together with this guy who was a designer at Macy's, product designer. I ran data and I was like, there's a high likelihood that this random niche brand of product is going to become a top 1% if we advertise.
Okay.
And he was like, okay. So he designed and made it look pretty. We got it made in Florida. The company that made it was spelling it was like vitamins because you're worth it, but they spelled you're wrong. So all of their bottles had.
How did they spell your?
I think it was because it's like why it's like you are,
Yeah.
It's your YOUR. And like you're worth it. And I was just like, he's like, you sure we should trust this company? I'm like, hey, they have insurance. Like, so they private labeled. I built my own brand, called it Healthy Alternatives, and launched it on Amazon. We advertised it. We basically put all the profit that we made back into ads, and we went from top 11,000 products out of like millions, like over 10 million.
Look at you.
And this is in the health and personal care categories, just toilet paper, toothpaste, all this other stuff. And then all the way to top 2,000. And I ended up selling the brand to the guy. It was business relationship wasn't really working. Plus, I mean, I think I was more interested in the why, and he was more interested about making money. I was like, again, I was like a science guy at heart. Like that's what I went to school for, math and stuff. So I never really cared about the money aspects of these things. So I sold the brand to him. Then I went back to reselling, and that's when people were like, "Hey, I'll pay you money to basically sell like my stuff." And I would look at all these Amazon guru people, and I was like,
So you basically became like that smart kid at the class that everyone just wanted to copy the answer.
"Yeah,
But in the e-commerce world.
yeah, yeah." Actually, on a quick side topic, when I was younger in Idaho, I remember I used to do all my homework. I did very well in math. I remember one day, like over the weekend, on Friday, I submitted my homework. Monday came, teacher pulls me aside and is like, "Sean, you didn't do your homework." And I was like, "I know I did." And I questioned myself. I felt like I was getting gaslit or something. I was like, "No, no, no, Sean, like you for sure did your homework." And what had happened was I just started digging through my desk, right? And my teacher's like, "Just accept it. Like you didn't do your homework." And I was like, "No, I did." And then I went and started digging at trash. And something told me, "Go check the teacher's trash." So I ran over to the garbage next to the teacher's trash can, and I started digging through it. She's like, "You're not going to find anything in there." And I literally pull out a piece of paper like this because I see the homework. And I look at it, and it's this other kid's name. And he was trying to erase his name from it. And I could see like the residue of it. And I was like, this guy stole my homework. And he did actually.
Yeah.
And my teacher's like, "How did you know that?" I was like, "I don't know." But
Because you're like, I know I did it.
yeah, I know I did it, but I was able to put the pieces together. And so now that I got older, that's kind of what was happening. People were trying to copy my homework. Like one of the guys I taught how to do Amazon.
Were they really copying it or trying to copy it, but you also were giving it out for free?
I was giving it out for free, but there was at one point I had a guy. He was like, "I figured this. I made $1 million," but like I would be quiet in the background. I'd be at his parties, and he was thanking everybody for like helping clean up his house and helping do all this stuff. And then he's like, "I wouldn't have been able to make this $1 million in Amazon without any of you guys." And I was like, "Don't forget about Sean in the back who taught you how to do this." He's like, "Oh yeah, Sean's the guy who taught me how."
Well, why did you make $1 million for yourself?
I did. Back then I was hitting 7 figures or I was hitting $1 million in Amazon sales.
All right.
So it was fine, but it's only like 150K, like 100K. It's not that much.
After
After all the fees and stuff.
So if you sell $1 million in Amazon after all the fees, you only keep
10 to 15%.
Wow.
Yeah, Amazon, and that goes into what I was saying when I figured out.
That is crazy.
Yeah, and so I ended up basically figuring out, like, okay, maybe Sean, there's a bunch of people that want to learn how to sell on Amazon, but there's a lot of gurus that are scamming people. Like, but I have these relationships with these brands, these huge brands that are in thousands of retail stores that I've been buying and selling from. So I was like, why don't I build a reseller enablement platform that allows anybody to resell? Because I thought that was the problem. And so I go and I tell my friends, like, "Hey guys, I'm going to go and start this reseller enablement platform." And instead of going to the friends, like the UC Berkeley group that I just met, I went to my friends in Oakland, that I grew up with.
Why?
This is what I was comfortable with. They were the people that I knew. I didn't really know the Berkeley kids. And I felt like with the relationship with the Berkeley groups was transactional. Like everybody was taking me out, like they didn't really care about me. They were just like
They wanted
they wanted the sauce for whatever I figured out.
yeah.
And so I brought in all my friends from Oakland, or a group of them, and I went and I tried to fundraise. I didn't know anything about business at all. I built this reseller enablement platform. It was like a guy that I took one like a linear algebra class with in college. And before I dropped out, that was like my developer. I had his boss, Ukrainian guy with kids, and, and he had a full time job being my CTO. And like, we went out, we were like, hey, let's gamify the Amazon thing. So I chopped up the listings on Amazon into like shares, like as if you were investing in stock. So you could buy a piece of a listing,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I would sell it to people, like random people. I had somebody's grandma selling on Amazon,
Damn.
and they didn't even know how to check their email. And so what had happened was I reached out to VCs and I didn't know anything about venture capital, power law, or any of the stuff that these guys use. I was like a math guy. So I'm in these VC meetings. I'm getting some meetings. Some VCs are like, hey, keep me up to date while you're building, get your platform up. And then 500 they ran into me through COVID during COVID, and it was all digital. And I didn't know anything.
Is 500 a VC?
500 Global is a venture capital firm.
Okay.
And I think I reached out to somebody and we get on this call and he's watching me kind of explain how these Amazon tools work
Mm-hmm.
and like how what I'm doing is like injecting resellers in. And he's like, you're disrupting the wholesale distribution space. And I was like, sounds like a bunch of random jargon, but okay. He's like, you want funding? And I was like, yeah, sure. So they pushed me through the program and they were like, just fill out the form. And then I met the team. And then eventually I got, venture capital. Like I got my first investment was about 130,000. They technically take 6% of your company for 150,000, but they take out 20 to 30K to hire a mentor.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm excited. I'm like, yes, like we're doing it. Like at the time we were bringing in 400K and we're making 10% of that in profit, from no advertising. I was like, holy crap, we're making a lot of money right now. So what ended up happening was we got this injection. And right when the program started, I started to look at the other teams that were getting into the program. Everything was digital. And that was probably one of the harder parts that took me time to adjust to the space. A lot of venture capital is really about networking and socializing into these ecosystems. And I didn't understand that. And because it was COVID, it was a digital. I was in their first digital, like online batch, that they
Mm-hmm.
had. And so,
The Zoom batch.
yeah, I was basically a Zoom badge. But what was crazy was we were getting hit up by like SoftBank, Kraft, like Andreessen, like all these big funds started coming in. And 500's like, Sean's company is going to be the big thing. And I'm just getting super excited. Serena Williams fund comes in. It was like, hey, you're working on something cool. And I'm building all these like super friendly relationships with these VCs. I'm like, yes, like this is happening. Like, I don't know what this idea is yet, but it's like things are happening. And after seeing the team dynamics, 500 was kind of starting to push me and like, hey, you should get rid of some of your teammates. I think you have the wrong people. And I was like, I don't know what they mean by that. Like, I was like, these are like my friends. I'm not going to just fire my friends.
So you didn't know how.
I never had hired it, like really hired anything.
So you didn't know at that time.
Yeah.
Friends and family are some of the probably worst business partners.
They can be.
They can be.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you make friends that you can do business with. I figured out how to do that later.
Certain friends that have that type of background could be a great asset.
Yeah.
But hiring someone with no knowledge of it just because they're your homie.
Yeah, and that's
could be disastrous.
It was a huge disaster. We actually got right when we got into the program, just I won't go too much into it, but ended up getting like 80-90% of our resellers banned on Amazon. And I had a mentor.
But that was your sauce.
That was exactly.
You made the reseller thing.
Right.
But then how did you get them banned?
So one of my teammates' accounts got banned because I figured out a way to exploit the supply chain gap. So on Amazon, what you can do is you can essentially pre-sell something. So if you don't have it in stock, you can jump on the listing and use the tools to predict traffic, like what's going to come in. So say 1,000 sewing machines need to be that people are going to buy 1,000 sewing machines of Singer, whatever, this month. If there's no one on the listing, you can be the only one on there and says, hey, I don't have it yet, but it won't say that. It'll just say like your account, your store is in stock, and you can buy it for me and I'll ship it to you in 2028. And people who, because they're not reading, they're buying that. So like, oh, cool. I need to get this sewing machine. So a lot of stuff
They're selling a product they don't even have.
they don't even have. And I was doing it because I had direct relationships with the distribution company. And at the time I was telling my teammate, hey man, be careful, because I showed him how to do it and he started making about like $80,000 a week.
So when it came time to refund the money, he didn't have the money anymore.
Yo, Amazon was holding it.
Oh, okay.
Payments. But it's still they're holding people's payments.
Yes.
Right. So I'm telling him, hey man, be careful to like list all this stuff that you don't have. Like Amazon could flag your account. And he said, oh, I'll be fine. And then he had no experience reselling, and I didn't know that really. I just hired him. He's my friend. And so his account gets banned. And then because of the way we were logging in, we didn't have a really technical product. It was just me gaming the Amazon algorithm with spreadsheets. And we didn't even have like a real platform. People were just giving us money to buy stuff. So I was doing something because it was making money, right?
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have tech under it. So the way we were logging into accounts was manually on my laptop. So when his account got banned, my account got banned, my dad's account got banned, and all of my resellers, about 80% of them, boom, overnight. And their money was frozen. So it went from like 400K in product spending a month, spent like a month to like $5,000-$10,000.
And did it ever get unbanned?
Yeah, so what had happened was I was just like, I was telling my guys, I was like, I've never had this happen in the 10 years I've been selling. And I don't know what to do. And everybody kind of froze up.
And they're all blaming you?
And they were just like, well, I'm gonna go try to help. And they just left. And I was sitting there in the room, like right when this happened. And my advisor's trying to like mentor me on how to pitch and work on my idea. And